Welcome back to Boruto Anime Review, episode number 28. And this one is the 20th episode of Boruto, Naruto Next Generations, A Declaration of War. Yeah, this is basically you can kind of see this episode as set up for the next one. That's simply the whole point of this one, just setting up. Boruto finally meets the main villain of the storyline, which I've heard from an article. This guy is actually Kaseme's son. Kaseme was one of the seven swordsmen from the previous generation, who was also a member of the Akatsuki and trying to think, Itachi's partner, his second partner he had, actually was his third partner he had when he was working for the Akatsuki, who basically killed his predecessor to the Salamander sword, which for some reason I'm like, okay. Now they show the end basically. Now I'm gonna get to that in a minute basically of how these swords. I'll get to in a minute. Basically, like I predicted, Chochira basically accepted that Kagura wants to take the test to candidacy test for his sword. Fine, perfectly fine. I kind of knew this would happen, and of course you have Boruto media with him later in the training area, which the training area for the Hit and Miss Village is basically an area filled with water. I guess because they use a lot of water jutsu, so I guess that's why they meet there. And then, of course, that's when Boruto finally meets the main villain of the storyline, Kaseme's son, Satsuma, I think his name is. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Which Kage refers to as Mr. Satsuma because, well, he has a past with him. Excuse me. His past with him is the fact that when he was in training, he wounded him. Basically, it showed like a scar across his chest. Apparently Kagura did that to him when he was a bit younger. But apparently Satsuma didn't have a problem with that at all. He doesn't hate him for that at all. Surprisingly, I would have thought maybe he held a grudge, but apparently nope. Apparently that's no problem with him. He doesn't mind getting a scar. Of course, ninjas get scars all the time, but as from a fellow ninja, that's a bit something. Yeah, it's a bit head scratching why he doesn't hate him, despite the fact he gave him the scar. And apparently he blackmails him into basically joining the new Seven Swordsmen. Which, when he shows them off, it's like he recruited people who look almost exactly like their predecessors. Almost like every single one of them. Except for like one black guy for some reason, yet I don't remember any of the previous Seven Swordsmen being black. Yeah. And they get a chance to show these guys off, and there's actually two women part of the Seven Swordsmen, which actually I thought that was interesting. From seeing them in the Shippuden when they showed off the previous Seven Swordsmen during the war, of course in flashback, and of course seeing the reanimation jutsu of the previous Seven Swordsmen. As far as I can tell, there was only like one woman part of the crew, and yet this one has two women. Okay, that's actually quite interesting. I guess that things have changed so that they have two women now. Interesting. I wonder if Satsuma basically mentioned that most of the previous members of the Seven Swordsmen were killed by Might Guy, Might Guy's father, and of course Might Guy happens to be the sensei to Metal Lee's father, Rock Lee. I'm a little surprised they never brought that up. Or how about the fact that Kaseme could have brought up to Boruto the fact that his father actually fought Naruto a couple times. Never actually defeated him per se, but he did fight him. Yep, could have brought that up, but my guess is the writers probably of this episode probably forgot that. It's kind of like the way it was a couple episodes back, where like when they show the previous Mazakagi, they could have mentioned wrote in the script where she could have mentioned both to Sadara and Boruto that she has met both their fathers. Like in the case of Barto, he has met his father and see him fight. He's a really damn good fighter. And you could have mentioned to Sadara like that I fought your father. I spit lava in his face. Yeah, but my guess is that the creators of the show probably didn't want to do that. But as somebody like me who probably remembers this stuff vaguely pretty well when it comes to the anime, not very much with the manga per se, but I do remember this from the anime. They could have mentioned that. I really wish they would throw in a little more continuity nods of basically to the previous generation of basically people meeting other people in the previous generation. Yeah, that's something quite odd though. Like about the show, it's like they mention flashbacks. They show flashbacks to the original Naruto show, but not the Shippuden. I don't really know why. I don't know. As far as I can tell, fans of the Naruto franchise are not embarrassed by Shippuden. Shippuden was a great show. But yeah, for this show, apparently, stuff that happened in this show, apparently no one's allowed to reference it. I mean, yeah, they bring up the fourth grade ninja war. They mention that. But they don't mention, like, little details that I think they should bring up, basically, as part of, like, good points of conversation. Of course, in the show, they don't mention that Shisuma basically is the son of Kasime. I don't know why they don't mention it, but they don't. And Baruto gets a chance to fight him. Then, of course, he gets a chance to fight, well, 6 of the new 7 swordsmen. Yeah, and he loses badly. Well, in the case of fighting Shisui, he actually puts up a pretty decent fight against him. But he does a pretty good fight against the new 7 swordsmen as well. And, of course, Kagura has to go off with him because basically he's blackmailed. Because, well, yeah, he's being blackmailed to join them. And, of course, he's knocked out. And then he wakes up and Sadara's treating his wounds. So she's being like her mother, basically being a medical ninja. And it turns out the person who basically rescued him, basically got him to get him to Sadara, was actually the guy who instigated Dekai's kidnapping in the previous in 2 episodes back. Yeah, apparently, Sasumura basically used and beat and kicked him out. Basically, he ran away like a coward. Basically, just used him. Yeah. And then basically Baruto's like, yeah, I'm gonna rescue Kagura. It's like, I'm the field trip manager. I'm trying to make sure that this field trip does not end with an incident. And Sadara basically is like, okay, I'm going with you because it's my job to keep an eye on you. And of course the other guys come along because he probably knows where the guy's headquarters is. Those are the 3. But basically, how's he gonna find him? Like, I got an idea. And that's really it for the episode. Oh yeah, they do show at the end. They show off somehow. I am not sure how Sasumura got this. They do show. I had to look this guy's name up. He was part of the previous 7 swordsmen. His brother was one of the previous swordsmen. Let's see if I can look this guy up here. I know he was one of the Taka group. Yes, I remember that. And I saw him pop up a couple times. Let's see. Here we go. His name is Sagetsu Hutsukai. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce the guy's name. Yeah, he actually made an appearance this episode. I was a little surprised to see him. A little bit surprised, but not all that surprised because, well, he's from this village, and the fact his brother was part of the previous 7 swordsmen. So I do have a theory that he's the one who supplied this new 7 swordsmen with their swords. But I'm kind of like, I get the fact he supplied it to them, fine, but where did he get these swords? Especially since, well, the Executioner's Blade, my theory is that Kakashi probably still had that thing, but somehow basically doesn't have anymore. Salamandra basically is with Killer Bee, but yet somehow basically they got the sword. Somehow. And the 2 lightning swords, that was held by 2 other members of 7 swordsmen. And it was handed off to Dorai, one of Killer Bee's students. Yeah, somehow they got the swords back. All the previous swords. Which, I'm still wondering, okay, where did he get these swords? Because a lot of these swords were either lost or misplaced after the Force got injured. I'm sure that a lot of these swords probably left on the battleground. Maybe, this is just my personal theory, that after the war ended, he went to the battlefield where the 7 swordsmen, the reanimation jutsu version of these guys came about, and he probably ransacked the field looking for these things, and he probably found them and kept them hidden for years. For 15 years he kept these things hidden, and yet now he gives them away? Okay, fine. But how did he get away the swords from Dorai? Yeah, that is the question I like to ask. Or how did he get the sword with Killer Bee? Because when you see Killer Bee at the end of in the final season of the show during the whole wedding arc, he still has the sword. So did he lose it at some point? He must have lost that after Naruto Hinata's wedding, because apparently I'm seeing it in Sasumura's hand. Somehow he got it. I don't know how, but he got it. The only sword I didn't see in that box was the Executioner's Blade. Yeah. As far as I know, Kakashi was the last person I saw with it, and yeah, I've heard a rumor that Zabuza is probably gonna make an appearance in this arc, so maybe they're gonna resurrect him. That would be something. I heard he's gonna come back maybe in episode 30. I've read an article he might come back for that, but yeah, it's just a rumor. But that's like 2 weeks from now. Next week's episode is going to be Boruto team up with the current Mazakage and the predecessor to take on the new Seven Swordsmen. Now, going to him is quite interesting because, well, he himself is one of the Seven Swordsmen, Chotaro. Interesting. My guess is me just happened to be there just by sheer coincidence. And somehow he convinces them basically via conversation. You don't hear what exactly they say because it's just a bar talking over the scenes next week. I'm sure it's gonna be a pretty decent conversation, and he probably convinces them to help him, especially since he does know those people pretty well, and of course the people from his village. He doesn't want to start a war, and there's also reference like Sasumura kept bringing up like if he kills Boruto, he'll instigate a war by the Hidden Leaf Village. Not necessarily. The only thing he might endure is not war from the Hidden Leaf Village. He probably earned wrath from his father, who was one of the Jirajiki. Yeah. I mean, I wonder if Boruto could have brought up the fact that, like the third Mazakage, he's a host of one of the Tail Beasts. So, yeah, Naruto's probably gonna kill this guy if he kills Boruto. I mean, Bartos and his father don't get along, but they do care about each other. I mean, if anybody does harm Naruto will get really ticked off. Or if anybody hurts children of his friends, he gets really ticked off. That's just the way he is. So basically, in some way, Barto is kind of like his father in a way, but not a complete carbon copy. And he basically kind of make a choice. Basically, he does bring up the fact that in the episode, that it was kind of Barto's idea for him taking the sword because, okay, it's his life. He should make his own choices. Don't have to basically depend upon the fact that his grandfather was one of the Mazakages. But they don't bring up the fact that Itachi was the one who killed him. Yeah, I'm kind of like, couldn't they mention that little factoid that Sadara's uncle was the one who killed him? I don't know. It's like, yeah, factoids like that basically don't matter to the writers. Just trying to do a good story. I get that, but you can at least throw some continuity nods. It wouldn't hurt the show. At least people from Shippuden can feel like though that you can reference something that happened in the previous show. Okay, fine. But that's just a minor complaint about the show. But I just kind of think they should bring up little factoids like that. Just sort of like, hey, I knew you, and hey, I knew about that, and or at least minor stuff like that. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Next week's episode is the new Seven Swordsmen. Yeah, that's the name of the next episode, New Seven Swordsmen. Which they mentioned this name in this episode. Until I see you on next week for episode number 29. Okay? But until then, we'll see you there. Bye.